Welcome to the Bernard Lee Poker Show. We are very fortunate to have this guest on with us. A real great story. We talked about it in the open, in the news, of course. This gentleman won event number 4, $200 no limit hold'em, $20,000 guarantee over a field of 264 players. He is really a fan favorite in the community down in Mississippi. And he is going to tell his story of not only the win, but also the disease that he is suffering from and how he really fell in love with poker. Welcome to the show, David Adam Bomb Hendrix. David, thanks for joining us here on the Bernard Lee Poker Show.
Thank you, Bernard. You're the best, man.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on. It was a great story. A lot of people have been reading about it. Again, just to review, the Gulf Coast Poker.net hosted an event at the Pearl River Resort in Mississippi, the Pearl River Poker Open. There were numerous events that were held, and you played in event number 4, the $200 no limit hold'em event with the 264 entry field, and you won the event. It must have been an incredible experience to have that, and it was very emotional. You told me about that. We'll talk more about that a little bit later in the show, but I really want to get your background and how you kind of got into poker, because unfortunately you are afflicted with a specific disease, the Werdnig-Hoffmann disease, which is a very severe form of spinal muscular atrophy. Talk a little bit about kind of growing up with this affliction and how it's really affected you. And if I'm correct, the doctors say that you are literally the oldest person living with this disease, right?
That's correct. That's what they tell me. And growing up as a child, it was definitely different. I'm one of 12 cousins, and I would always go out and watch them play baseball and basketball, and I would just have to be a spectator. And once I got introduced to poker at the age of 14, I mean, everything changed. I found something that did not limit me. It let me be 100%. And I've enjoyed every moment and every hand. I have a passion for poker unlike any other.
Right, right. And so your disease, has it been progressing and unfortunately being progressively worse? Because if people are watching on YouTube,
Mhm.
you can see it. If not, it will describe it. You are unfortunately wheelchair bound,
Yes, sir, I
and
am.
your muscles are deteriorating, so it's a little bit, it's hard for you to obviously grab things and the like. Has it deteriorated over time? Like when you were younger, did you have some mobility in your limbs?
Yes, I did. When I was younger, I can remember being a young child, and I never could play baseball, but I did have a t-ball stand, and I was really young, maybe 5 or 6 years old, and I hit the t-ball stand. I hit the ball off of it, and I felt awesome. It felt amazing, and I was able to do natural things, normal things like feed myself and reach for a glass of liquid and stuff like that. But
Right.
as I got older, things got more difficult, and the deterioration of the muscles, it really took over. And I mean, it. I had a decent teenage life. I could do some things. I've never been able to walk. For
Hmm.
those that wonder, I know there's plenty of people that may wonder. I've never took a step in my life, and it's just been something I've had to live with. And the deterioration does not get any better. There's no cure for it. It is a terminal illness. It is a progressive illness, and it's very difficult on me and the people that take care of me.
Yeah. And I think that, this is, like I said, unfortunately, many of the people who are afflicted with this, which is, motor weakness, muscle weakness, lack of motor development and muscle. Unfortunately, the majority of the patients die prematurely in their infancy and often before 2 years old. But you are now 30 years old, as we
30
talked
years.
about, the oldest living person with this. Have the doctors figured out why? I mean, that's a blessing that you are able to be here at 30 years old and beyond. But have they figured out why? And are they even investigating maybe something about you could help future patients to maybe have a longer life?
Well, they have not looked into why. They're very baffled. I'm fixing to drop an atom bomb, as I would say, on the
Yeah.
poker table. I've actually been ventilated 3 times,
Wow.
and one time they knocked my tooth out. They jammed it in there so hard they didn't even know they knocked my tooth out until they took the ventilator out, and I spit the tooth out in my father's hand, and it was one of the roughest times of my life. Back when I was younger, I would get pneumonia a lot due to the illness and a weak immune system. So my grandmother, before COVID even hit, I couldn't go out with the pollen without wearing a mask
Hmm.
because I had a weak immune system. And if I got a cold or something, I would catch pneumonia.
Hmm.
And it was always difficult. I didn't like it, but I lived with it and it helped me. Without my grandmother, I probably wouldn't be here. I am a fighter, but even the greatest fighters in the world have to have a great support system.
Yeah. Yeah. And you, as you said, with regards to COVID, so this must have also been a scenario where you have to be very, very careful with regards to COVID as well, right?
Yes, and we was talking about the vaccine earlier. You and I'm
Yeah.
supposed to get vaccinated this month, and my doctor's appointment is actually the 21st. And I recommend anybody that hasn't gotten vaccinated to get vaccinated because it's affected lots of my family members. I've had some of them even pass away from
Oh,
the
wow.
coronavirus. So it
Wow.
is very real. It's not fake. It's not anything to play around with. It's not just for the elderly and people with illness to get vaccinated, but healthy people need to consider it as well.
Right, right. Well, definitely good words with regards to the vaccine. So let's talk a little bit beyond just your illness because you have overcome this and beyond. As you said, unfortunately, as you got older, your muscles got weaker, and sports and the competitive spirit was unfortunately out of the question.
Yeah.
And you as you said, you're watching your cousins playing sports, and it probably was you're longing to be out there and be competitive with them. But indirectly, poker ended up becoming that competitive outlet. Talk a little bit about how you found poker at the beginning.
Well, I was in Books and Millions, and me and my grandmother, we argue like a married couple, even though we're not, we do. And I was in there for too long because I don't get out much. And she said, David, if you don't pick a book right now, we're leaving and you're not getting one. So I look over to the bookshelf and at this point, I'm not thinking about what book to get, but I see Doyle Brunson and I see his face on the super system. And I'm like, well, I guess I'll pick this because my grandmother's in a hurry. And
Yeah,
it's almost like the universe put me in the right place at the right time.
right,
And once I bought that book, I said, man, you can do this. All you have to do is put the time, the effort, and you can do it. And ever since then, I've been playing. I started small. I actually started on vacation, sitting on top of a balcony in Gatlinburg, Tennessee.
Uh-huh.
And my father, my biological father, that um, my grandmother adopted me from, we was on vacation, and he had a deck of cards. And he said, "Do you know how to play Texas Hold'em?" I said, "I do, actually. I read a book on it." And we played for pennies for about 2 hours that night.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was hooked, man, ever since.
So Doyle Brunson's written two kind of books: the Super System, the original one, and then the second volume. The original
Right.
one is a lot of different games, stud,
Right.
draws, etc. And then the next one is a little bit more about Texas Hold'em. Which one did you have? Both of them? Did you
I
just
had
have?
both of them. And
Yeah.
and not just Doyle, but I mean, once I found out that I can do this, I actually looked into everything poker related, just like a baseball player or a basketball player would do. I looked into the history and Amarillo Slam and Stu Ungar and I mean just the old timers that really started it all. They're my idols. They're the ones I look up to, and one day I hope my name is up there with them.
Yeah, yeah. And you said you started playing for pennies with your biological father. How did you kind of progress from there? Did you start playing in home games? Did you play online? Like, how did you start improving your game? And in addition to playing, did you do other books? Did you go onto training sites online? How did you get your game? Because it's one thing to read about No Limit Hold'em, right? It's one thing to read
Yes,
about
but
it.
you got to
It's one
play
thing to
before.
play pennies
Yeah,
too, but for you to play in a tournament, a buy-in at the
it's a
Pearl
different
River,
it's a different monster
right,
altogether,
and win
man.
thousands of dollars, this is a very different beast, right?
Yes, it is. And let me tell you how I got into it. Actually, it's very unique. Um, After I read the books and I played the pennies, before the home games, I would go into MySpace and Daniel Negreanu would have blogs that he would write up while he was staying in hotel rooms at the time. And he would write those blogs and they wouldn't have a ton of viewers or nothing like that. But I would read each and every one of them because him being a young guy and him not being as old as Doyle, him not being as old as Doyle, him being an up and comer at the time, I really looked at him like, well, this guy's studying, this guy's putting the work in. I need to be reading what he's doing because he's doing something right. And I was on MySpace and I was reading his blogs and I followed Daniel a lot. So if Daniel ever hears this, yes, I followed you back when you was on MySpace.
Right.
And after that, I would get on the internet and I would try to find any home game I could get a hold of. And my father, my biological father, had a friend named Bill, and they owned hundreds of acres of hunting land. And you had to have a VIP membership to go down there. And I remember being 16 years old, and they would let me come down. And every Friday, me and all the old timers, we would play minimum $20 buy-in, and it would be 50 cent dollar blinds, no limit hold'em. We would eat home style meals, and it was just a good time every Friday night. And I did that until I was 18. And not just there, but I went everywhere I could find. I was at one point I was getting my grandmother to take me to people we didn't even know's house. And I meant it was and she was like, "Are you sure it's safe for us to go here?" And I'm like, "Yeah, grandma, I talked to him on the phone. It's fine." And it turned out it was fine. I mean, I met a lot of friends over the years, and looking back on it, it probably wasn't the smartest thing to do to go to a stranger's house and play for money like that. But I mean, I wouldn't trade it for nothing in the world now.
Right, right. So obviously you got the experience under your belt. You played a lot. Let's talk a little bit about of how you play, right? Because I'm sure people who are listening right now and seeing this thing, I'm a little confused. if you don't have the mobility, with your limbs right now, so you can't
Hmm.
really reach for cards or things like that, or reach for chips, or bring in a pot, or things like that, because of
The
the
disability.
disability.
Yeah.
How do you do this, right? I mean, it's very difficult. So how would you do this? So
But
explain a little bit of how, when you're playing. We're talking with David Adambom Hendrix, who won event number 4 at the Pearl River Poker Open. Tell the listeners how you go about playing an event.
okay, well, first of all, if you're in a position like me and you can't move your hands or anything like that, you have to depend on somebody. And I depend on the dealers, the card dealers. And I've made many of friends, people that's dealt in the World Series all the way from the East Coast to the West Coast. And what I do is I always try to get the one seat because a majority of the population, and this is me thinking about other people, a majority of the population is right handed. So I try to sit to the left of them where they can help me look at my cards. And whenever I play, I had to create my own play style. Most people play the player, but I play the seat number because when you're sitting beside the dealer and you can't turn and look to the right and see all the players, you have to remember what seat number raised, what seat number folded, and I have to keep that stored in my memory. And the dealer announces verbally seat number 6, seat number 7, done such and such. That way I can memorize it. And my memory is pretty good. I work my memory a lot, and you
Mm-hmm.
have to be able to do that. But that's how I gather information on the player and I carry it throughout the tournament and throughout my poker career.
So you unfortunately can't really turn
To the right,
sideways. Wait,
right.
oh,
So
right. Okay,
it's
so
like
can you
it's like
turn?
I'm it's like I'm blindsided, and
Right.
the only thing that I can do is see the players to the left of me, and I
Mm-hmm.
have to take the information that I've gathered from the dealer that he announced and the seat numbers, and I have to memorize it myself, and keep that in my memory bank because those plays that they make are very important. Each player plays differently. And I know
Sure.
you know this, and I don't know if the listeners know this, but you have to gather information when you're playing in a tournament on each player because everybody has their own play style.
Right. And it's very interesting that you'll have to memorize that, because if you're sitting in seat 1, you pretty much can see everyone from about seat 5 over.
Correct,
But 6,
correct.
7, and 8, and 9, especially
Yep,
9. I mean, I
yeah,
know for
yep,
me, even me in seat 1, I hate those
yeah,
seats, because
yeah,
it's
yeah.
impossible to see what the person beyond has done. Like, I don't even know sometimes that they fold. I'm like, you got to tell me that they folded, because I can't even see them through you, obviously. Talking about the dealer.
Right. And
So,
that's, yeah.
right, right. So I definitely can see where that obviously becomes an issue. Has it ever become an issue where you can't get into that seat, or is it pretty much everyone allows you
Well,
to get in that seat, or do you have to sit in like seat 9 or 10, the other side of the deal?
actually, sometimes it's very rarely that I have to sit in the 10 seat, but I have been blessed to know the tournament directors, and they are great people. Paul Dutch, Heather, Holman, all of them, everybody that works with the Pearl River Open, they're nice people. Even in other tournaments that's outside of their boundaries, people are not that bad at getting me in the one seat because they understand that if I could, I would sit anywhere.
Right,
And they have to try to help me to the best they can. So
right,
I usually have to, and that's a good point that you brought that up. I usually have to be there early because unlike an average player that just buys in, I have to get up, get around, and be there about an hour early because sometimes in big events like this, where there's hundreds, if not thousands of people, I have to give the tournament directors time to seat me in the one seat
Right.
or to find me a spot in the one seat.
Right. Right. And if it's correct, is that so? I've been in tournaments, especially let's say at the One Step Closer Foundation, where a couple of the players actually have cerebral palsy. Similar situation, they can't grab the cards, etc. So
Yes,
they have
sir.
somebody sitting with them, helping them out. In your specific situation, you rely completely on the dealers, right? You don't have anyone coming with you.
Correct. I mean, it's 100% the dealer, and it's me and the dealer. And some dealers actually look at my cards, and some of the dealers don't, because I believe they don't want to give a read. You know,
Sure.
the ones that don't look at them, they don't want to give a read, an
Right.
accidental read. And some of them look at them because it makes them feel like they're in the game themselves.
Of course.
It,
Of course.
and
Of
and they're
course.
like, and they enjoy it, man. They really do, and I
Sure.
enjoy it. And
Right.
I'll tell you a short story. I was at the Run Good tournament in Tunica,
Yeah.
and we was going on break, and I bluffed a man out of a very huge pot, and I had 7 deuce, the worst hand in poker. And the dealer looks over at me when everybody walks away from the table, and he says, "I will never forget that in my entire life. That was the baddest thing I've ever seen anybody do."
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's awesome. So one of the other questions I was wondering about was is that you talked about you getting your chops playing in a certain home games. Did you play it all online to improve your game?
I did. I played on Poker Stars, like you said you did.
Yeah,
And this was back before they
before Black Friday.
yeah,
Yeah.
before Black Friday. And I played a lot on there, and I played the small games and small tournaments. I never did get into anything big because I didn't feel like I had enough experience at the time.
Right.
But now that I've been playing for over a decade, I definitely have the experience to take it to the next level, and I feel comfortable with playing with anybody. I mean, if I was sitting at the table with Daniel, it would be a blessing in disguise. I'd be happy. Same with Phil Hellmuth, any of them. I'm
Yep.
not intimidated. I would be blessed. I mean, I am blessed. I feel very blessed. I feel blessed that you have me on the show, Bernard.
Well, it's being my pleasure. When we come back, we're going to talk more with the atom bomb himself, David Hendrix, about the tournament and about the future, what other events he's looking to play in when we return here on the Bernard Lee Poker Show.